All right, everyone, settle down. I have an announcement for you today, Mr. Kaho's class quickly quieted down. Usually, whenever the lesson started, he would just go right into the work. He never announced anything before the lesson unless it was important. Mr. Kaho himself was an owlin who stood about 8 feet tall. His race, despite having the eye positioning of a predator species, was surprisingly a prey species. He had 2 tall antlers, long slender arms and legs, and each of his hands had 3 fingers and a single thumb. He also had hooves, which wasn't uncommon among the many races of the Milky Way. Now, I'm sure you're all aware of the newest race among the Galactic Council, the humans. The students nodded, some even making comments about them, usually about how they were seen as terrifying, all-devouring Deathworlders. You see, every single race in Mr. Kaho's class came from very peaceful planets. There were plenty of animals and plants, and the weather was also very calm. For the longest time, it was believed that sentient life could only exist on such planets. However, that was quickly disproven with the discovery of humans, who, upon entering the Galactic Empire, were nicknamed the Deathworlders. One of Mr. Kaho's students, Athelia, raised her hand. Mr. Kaho, is it true what they say about humans? Do they really come from a death world? Indeed, Mr. Kaho replied. From our understanding, humans are the only sentient race ever discovered to have originated on a death world. Now then, can someone please explain to me what a death world is? Another student raised their hand. Death worlds are planets that, until the discovery of humans, were believed to be completely inhospitable for sentient life. Lower classes of death worlds have only a few traits that earn such a title, such as natural disasters, poisonous foliage, heavily fluctuating temperatures, or violent predator animals. Usually, death worlds only have one dominating trait, making them already rare, and those with multiple factors are even rarer. That's a short description of death worlds, yes, Mr. Kaho said. Now, I'm sure you're all wondering why I asked you about this newly discovered race of death worlders. That's because Mr. Kaho cleared his throat, and the students waited in anticipation. We will be having humans attending this very institution. One will even be joining our class. Everyone was frozen with fear. Each student turned and looked at each other, conveying the same message without needing to say a single word. Alia, a pyrox and the only carnivore in the class, was already feared by her classmates, to the point where all the desks around her were vacant in fear that she might try to eat them. She wouldn't, of course, she had more self-control than that, but the thought was still there. Pretty much everyone in the school, aside from the staff, was scared of carnivores, but Deathworlders added a whole new layer of fear into the mix. There was so much they didn't know about them. Finally, Mr. Kaho broke the silence. Since this new student transfer is such a big event for our class and, more importantly, our institute as a whole, for the next 30 minutes you shall be given time to do as you please. You all know the drill: no leaving class without permission, nothing inappropriate, and don't be too loud. Once the 30 minutes is up, your new classmate will arrive. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. The next 30 minutes were filled with pure tension. Even Mr. Kaho was a bit anxious. He hadn't actually met the human before and knew nothing about their race, planet, or way of life. All he knew was that this human he was going to teach belonged to a species whose very existence had turned everything they knew about sentient life on its head. He did, however, catch some comments about the humans from the students in the class. Some said they were omnivores, a type of creature that had only been theorized to exist. Others said their raw strength alone was enough to overpower any other sentient species. While in most cases Mr. Kaho would dismiss such rumors, this was a special case. They were all in the same boat regarding knowledge of these creatures. While Mr. Kaho was thinking to himself, Athelia came up to him. Sir, Athelia asked, "Oh, Athelia, do you want to ask me something?" Yes, sir, it's about the Deathworlder. Do you know anything about them, how they act, what they eat, or their culture? Mr. Kaho let out a sigh. If I'm being honest, Athelia, no, I'm just as much in the dark as you and everyone else about these humans, although I might refrain from using the term Deathworlder to describe them if I were you. They may do you think what the others say is true, that they're omnivores or the strongest sentient species to exist? Athelia asked. Mr. Kaho thought for a moment before answering. Well, if you're referring to the omnivore rumor, I highly doubt it. All creatures, primal or sentient, consume either vegetation or meat. There's no evidence to suggest that a creature could evolve on a planet with enough resources to be omnivorous. As for the rumors about strength, Mr. Kaho paused. Going into deep thought for a moment, it may very well be possible. Your race, the Pyrox, is carnivorous and quite strong. It's possible that these humans could also be carnivores. After all, they are from a death not long after. There was a knock at the door. Everyone fell silent. The time had come. The door opened, and in walked the headmaster with a strange, never-before-seen creature. Everyone, including Mr. Kaho, stared at the human. It had 2 eyes on the front of its face, as well as a nose and mouth. It also had 2 hands, each bearing 4 fingers and a thumb. It appeared to be about 6 feet tall, with what looked like fur on the top of its head. Athelia, being the only carnivore in the room, noticed that it had a large amount of muscle on its body. This wasn't unusual for her, as Pyrox had large amounts of muscle too. However, this creature's muscle appeared far more solid than any race she had seen. From that alone, she could tell that these humans were no joke, and the way it walked, it just seemed so strange, almost like it was built for stalking. "Greetings, Mr. Kaho," the headmaster said. "This is your new human student." "Ah, I see. What an interesting name, Mr. Kaho said. "Pleased to meet you, human." "I'm your new teacher, Mr. Kaho. Why don't you introduce yourself to the class?" As Diana turned to face the class, many of the students kept watchful eyes on her. She certainly wasn't what they were expecting, but they all knew that looks could be deceiving. Diana then cleared her throat and spoke in an oddly soothing tone, much like an owlin. This caught Mr. Kaho a bit off guard. "Hello everyone, my name is Diana. I'm a human from the planet Earth in the Sol system. I'm 17 years old and I'm, I guess, what you would consider to be female." The class began to murmur among themselves for only a few seconds before being silenced by Mr. Kaho. "Okay everyone, as we all know, I'm sure you all want to ask Diana many questions. We will, if that's okay with her." Mr. Kaho turned to Diana, who simply nodded. Even though she had only just arrived, she seemed quite excited to share information about her people and her planet. Mr. Kaho was also excited. His entire job was to share info and teach people, but he rarely ever got to learn anything new. "For your species, are you carnivores or herbivores?" one of the students asked. "Actually, humans are omnivores. We eat both plants and meat and can survive on diets restricted to only one of those eating styles," Diana replied. The entire class was silent with awe. Even Mr. Kaho couldn't believe what he was hearing. After all, not even 30 minutes ago, he had told Athelia that omnivores weren't real. Yet here was one standing in his classroom. Another student asked the question that everyone was wondering, but how is that possible? No known species comes from a planet that supports enough plant life and wildlife for them to be omnivores. Diana tilted her head and gave a confused look. "Really? You're telling me that you guys don't have mass quantities of animals or plants on your planet? Well, humans have been hunting and farming since the early days of our race. Most of the wildlife that was on Earth went extinct before we even hit our first industrial age. Quite a few dangerous animals are kept either in public zoos or in wildlife preserves. So your planet is a predator-class death world, then?" one of the students said. "A predator class? What?" Diana asked. Mr. Kaho spoke up. "Oh, death worlds are classified depending on what part of the environment is hostile towards sentient life. These come in 4 classes: natural disaster, predator, toxic foliage, or inconsistent temperatures. From what it sounds like, your planet is a predator-class death world." The headmaster simply gulped in anticipation. He had already read the soon-to-be public reports about Earth and knew that Mr. Kaho's assumption was very wrong. However, a part of him wanted to see the reaction from everyone's faces when Diana told them the truth about her home world. "Mr. K. Aho, was it?" Diana said. "You say that my planet is a predator-class death world. Well, from what you've described, it does fit under such a name, but what?" Mr. Kaho said in anticipation. "My home world, Earth, checks all the categories for what you guys consider a death world. We have predators, toxic plant life, inconsistent temperatures, and natural disasters, and we have multiple of each." Everyone was completely silent. Even Mr. Kaho was in shock. "How is that possible? You're telling me that you humans survived all of that and became a spacefaring species?" Diana simply shrugged. "Yeah, why is that not normal?" Mr. Kaho recomposed himself, although not without some difficulty. No, I'm afraid not. Although it appears we have much to learn about your species in your home world, unfortunately, it looks like we won't have enough time today. Mister. Kaho turned to the class. Now remember, everyone, assignments are due by the end of the day. After that, we'll begin our lesson on the human homeworld Earth. Diana finished his sentence. Yes, Earth, thank you. Who are you? Diana raised an eyebrow at the pronunciation of her name. Sure, people had pronounced her name strangely before, but never like that. It was almost as if he was struggling to say it. However, she also remembered that the person in question was an 8-foot-tall alien that looked like a mix between an owl and a deer. No doubt something was going to get mixed up, even with the translators they were wearing. Shortly after, the bell rang and class was dismissed. As Diana was about to leave, Mr. Kaho called out, "Excuse me, human, could I talk to you? I would like to discuss some things regarding the next lesson." Diana turned around and walked over to Mr. Kaho. She could tell the conversation was about to take an interesting turn. After all, everyone in the class had almost fainted at the brief description of Earth. Human Diana, I was wondering if I could have some assistance planning the next lesson. Oh, sure. What do you want to know? Well, Mr. Kaho looked away from Diana, almost out of shame for having to ask one of his own students for help planning a lesson. When it comes to my knowledge about Earth, I don't actually know anything. In fact, you're the first human I've ever met. Oh, Diana said. Nothing at all, huh? I'm afraid not. Nothing about how you humans live, your culture, history, or your planet in general. Well, other than the fact that it apparently checks all the boxes for the galaxy's most dangerous death world. Well, Diana pulled up a chair and sat down on the other side of Mr. Kaho's desk. I'm afraid we're going to have to start at the beginning. Meanwhile, back at her dorm, Alia sat on her bed, stewing in her thoughts. Everything that the Death Worlder said, the way it moved, the way it spoke, it was like it was a combination of every other creature across the galaxy turned up to 10. She could only imagine what its strength was. However, she didn't feel afraid like the others. This could have been partly due to her predatory nature, but a part of it was most definitely curiosity. She would have plenty of time to find out, as she had gathered after class that there were about 30 humans in total that had been transferred to this very institution. Oh boy, were things about to get interesting.